coming. Coaching York is a social enterprise with around just under 80. We're based in York, but we have and represented here today Munich and the Algarve in Portugal. Our Spanish representative member is not here on this call, but she is doing that's Anne-Marie Crowther. So we like to think we are certainly European. That's the key thing there. Our ambition is to help more and more people experience coaching and live its benefits around the UK primarily. And then one of the things I really get out of Coaching York and have done for almost the past decade is putting something back, the pro bono side that we want people to do, the CPD, and helping grow an organization and all the learning that comes from it. So a very rich source. And for the loneliness of the self-employed coach, helps get over that with colleagues around. Members say that they really enjoy the support of each other, the help that's given, mentoring and so on. The CPD events monthly, obviously this month we're cramming a lot in, means we can show our expertise by offering sessions either this week, as some of you are doing, or throughout the year. We have podcasts, and Geoff and fellow director Fiona host those, so they're out monthly more or less, and they're advertised through the LinkedIn page and on our website. So lots of interesting things there. If you've got a subject you'd be really interested in, not volunteer. And we can signpost other coaching groups around, like the Co-Coaching Circle in York. There is a York chapter of the Climate Coaching Alliance, which has a bi-monthly discussion on matters around coaching. One of the really good things is that we have such a diversity of members and experience. So those of us with less hair and whiter hair, to those with plenty of hair of various ages. But the strength of that is how we can all contribute one way or another. And a number of our members, like Steve, are also coach supervisors. So that is, we can signpost people there. But basically what we're able to do, the message of Coaching Out, is to engage with commercial firms who come to us because we can provide a bespoke coaching team of experienced coaches for paid for work, which saves them a lot of time, but also most importantly in the community with pro bono work. So if you've not done it already, how to join, have a look at coachingyork.co.uk. But thanks for joining in to help us enable more people to experience coaching and live its benefits. So first thing we want to do is just very quick introductions. I'm Steve Gorton, one of the directors of Coaching York. I've been coaching since 96, mainly through my own company, Enabling Development, across a range of places, and I spend a deal of time keeping the wheels on Coaching York. Who wants to be the first volunteer? Geoff will introduce himself a little later on. Steve, I see your microphone's open.
In preparation. Okay, so I'm Steve Page. I'm actually a therapist and a coach. So I've been a therapist a lot longer than I've been a coach. So I've been a therapist since mid-1970s, started coaching more seriously, did some training in around 2011, 2012, really. Yeah, I actually don't supervise anymore. I did supervise for a long time. No, it's fine. It's fine. I've actually retired from supervising and from training. I just have a small coaching and counselling practice now based in Sheriff Hutton.
Okay, yes, as you already said, I'm Harriet, based in Munich, Germany, and I had the opportunity in 2014 to help organizing the first International Coaching Week, Coaching York activities. And from then on, I'm a member of Coaching York, and this is, I really want to be more in Great Britain, but at the moment it's not possible for me. So I really hope that next year I will be again there in presence. And I'm coaching. I started coaching in the year 2000 something, and originally I was a personnel development officer with BMW.
So I'm relatively new to coaching, and I left financial services back in September last year. As of last Thursday, I qualified as a CPCC. So I'm celebrating that at the moment. I have a business that does half pro bono, half for profit, which is why I'm particularly keen to see what people say here, to see how it changes the conversation, me, others. So just keen to see what people think today.
Hi, yep. So I'm Margaret Ingleson, and as Steve said earlier, I'm based in Eastern Algarve. I own a company called Inspire Coaching, and so I still do some small amounts of coaching. We do some villa and room rentals here, and last year I started running coaching retreats and doing corporate away days as well. So there's quite a lot going on over here. But yeah, still very, very passionate about coaching.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rob Cooper. I live down the road from Steve in Haxby, just north of York. I'm on the exec for Coaching York and also director of Coaching York. I work for myself for 23 years now. A lot of my work is in career transition, so outplacement coaching, but I also dabble in training and facilitation. Outside of my work, I'm also involved in quite a lot of volunteer-led organisations, so hence the reason for wanting to come along and hear what Geoff has to say about this. So I think I know most of you, but nice to see you anyway.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Beresford Lewis, popularly known as Lewis, and I'm a business a business growth strategist. When I'm not doing that, I'm a business management lecturer, and I also work with a number of voluntary and community organizations. At the moment, we're in the middle of preparing a training for non-executive members because we want to get more community people sitting in on critical executive boards. So I'm just working on that with some colleagues of mine at the moment.
Yeah. So, well, now I'd like to introduce Geoff Ashton. He's our speaker today, but he's much better at talking than I am, so I'll let him introduce himself. Geoff, over to you, please.
I might take that as a compliment.
Of course it is.
Okay, so welcome to the round table. So the idea behind the round table is a little different from kind of a standard presentation. Rather than having a speaker with a presentation for everybody to then think about, the idea of the round table really is for somebody to come up with a subject, briefly illustrate it, and a couple of questions to then stimulate discussion and conversation. And I think there's probably a lot in your heads and experience that would be great to hear. So my job today really is to kick that off. In a couple of minutes, we'll probably split into a couple of breakout groups because I'm sure there's quite a lot that you'll have to share together, and then we'll come back together for some plenary. How we got to this day actually came from a conversation I was having with Steve Page. We were meeting up for a coffee, and I was asking Steve what he might want to do on a podcast. And we talked around this a bit, and he said, what about coaching as a volunteer? There's all kinds of things I've discovered as a volunteer that might not have done, or maybe definitely wouldn't have done just in normal practice. So that's to come. We've still got that in the pipeline, Steve, but I thought this would be a great subject for a roundtable conversation. So let me just kick it off. The two questions we'll be exploring are, when you're coaching as a volunteer, what kind of coaching have you done that you wouldn't have done in your normal practice? When you're coaching as a volunteer, what kind of coaching have you done that you wouldn't have done in your normal practice? And if you've got time to go on to, so what have you then learned from that, which you've taken into your normal practice? So I'll give one example just to kick this off. I do some coaching with an organization in Leeds called Transformation Leeds. they work with overseas students, undergraduates, graduates, postgraduates. Initially, they set themselves up to help overseas students acclimatise to coming into the United Kingdom, to make that shift from their culture into UK culture. And as time has gone on, they're also doing some work in helping students returning home to their home countries. Now, some people have come from Europe, fairly near the UK, the culture's fairly familiar. For others, UK culture has been very unfamiliar. Say if they've come from Africa, the Middle East, or a lot of people from the Far East. And one of the things they asked me to help them with was to explore with their students the issue of reverse culture shock. So you've been in the UK for 3, 4, 5 years. You may not have been home at all, or if you have for a very short period of time, now you're going back permanently. How do you cope with that? And this, for me, raised lots of questions that I didn't deal with in my normal coaching practice. So one of the questions that I was asked to help people think about was, have you ever felt like a stranger in your own country? I thought, wow, that's a good question. And then one of the exercises we did with people was to ask them to think about how they changed in the UK. So from physically, socially, academically, politically, spiritually, some people made big changes in that respect, financially, in terms of their skills and their sense of life purpose. And then they were asked to imagine themselves back in their home culture and home situation. And there are various issues that go along with reverse culture shock, and these are relevant for students, they might be relevant for service personnel, they might be relevant for people who've worked abroad for a number of years. And so the big one was when I lived in my own country, I had a particular place in the community. Well, when I go back, that place isn't there anymore because I'm not the same person, and actually somebody else may have taken the place that I had in the community. I might have been bright young thing, first person to leave my community, go abroad to go to university. There might be somebody else in that position now. So what's my place going to be? So huge, interesting questions to explore there. And I remember one particular conversation, and I'll just sort of finish with this anecdote. So together with this sort of input around reverse culture shock, I and a colleague of mine, we also did some one-to-one coaching with students. And I remember an hour and a half with a young lady who's about to go back to China. And we were talking about what she was going to do after university and her priorities. And so we talked about all the things I would normally have talked about with anybody in the UK who was finishing university. So what kind of work do you want to do, and where do you want to be, and how far from your place of home do you want to be? Where's your base? And there was a huge issue that came up, which doesn't come up for me typically with clients in the UK, and that was the issue of her family. So she said, for example, I am here in the UK because my family are paying for it. There's no state subsidy for this. So I have responsibilities to my family, and they actually sent me here under the expectation that I will be bringing something back to them. So part of, as far as the family was concerned, part of their motivation for supporting their child to go abroad and study was just the kudos, basically, of saying that they had a student, a daughter who'd been an overseas student, but also they were looking for some support from her, possibly in their business, possibly having to look after them in their older age, because again, there's no state support equivalent to our social security system or social assistance provision. And so when we thought about different issues she was thinking about, where she might want to work, what she might want to do, who she wanted to marry, I said, where does the question of what's important to your parents fit into this scenario? And she basically said, for me, it's the most important question. Now that's quite different from a lot of European or UK-based coaching where the question is to the client, what do you want? What's good for you? Because there's this whole cultural context, which for her was very different. So that set the parameters for the conversation, which was somewhat different to other conversations I'd be used to having. But that was what, when it came to coaching her, a person-centered coaching conversation was based around her priorities, and where her family fitted was a huge priority to take account of. And I would never have had that conversation with my normal suite of clients who I worked with. So fascinating, a lot of learning for me to do, a lot of reflection on my own culture and my own cultural attitudes that went with that. I have taken some of that learning back into my own practice, but I'll save that for the plenary at the end. So there you go. Here we go. So let me just very briefly talk about some of the main themes that we talked about. So Rob was talking about working with refugees or people who've just had permanent leave to remain granted in the United Kingdom, about that transition, about how that involves a mix of coaching and mentoring, but also some of the more challenging conversations where, although ostensibly Rob's there to talk about engaging with the UK job market, there's this whole history of how people have got to the UK, and some of that can be quite traumatic. How that can come up in conversations and how to manage it. Harriet was talking about doing pro bono work in schools where the cultural context is different. She finds that the kinds of coaching she does is very similar, but notice that some of the repeating issues and the strength of those issues can differ. So lots of sort of short-term uncertainty to deal with in certain school contexts, but also the issue of personal resilience is a very, very important one. And Alex is saying he's fairly new as a coach. So what's the difference between private clients and pro bono clients? It's all kind of working itself out. And the pro bono clients at the moment Alex is working with tend to be at a more senior level. And so one of the things he was talking about was how this was helping him think about the kinds of people he most wants to emphasize as his business progresses. So we'll come back and think about some of the issues around those. But some main themes that came out of your group, Steve?
Yeah, I think there were two things. It is the blurring of boundaries between mentoring, coaching and interestingly, both Harriet and Steve were coaching, inverted commas coaching, helping people through the pandemic. And that was quite an interesting one, although ostensibly it might have been coaching. So with COVID coaching, if we call it that, people were burnt out, having all sorts of traumas from that, and there was a deal of counselling. So one of the things was just use our skills. Steve is a therapist as well, so he got an additional range of experience and skills he could bring to that. Whereas Margaret sort of got thrown in the deep end, being given counselling clients because they were pre-sorted, and she thought they were going to be coaching clients. So it was really just a thing of getting on with it. But it came very much, as with Beresford, in working with volunteers in an NGO for looking at international business. What does the recipient need? I don't use the word coach either. What does the recipient need, and what do we bring to help them get through to it? And it's sort of, sorry, it can't help, disappear is not the most helpful one. So it was, how can you help them move along and get some resolution, if not full resolution? So it's very much mix of what have we got in our tool bag that could help this person now, even if it may not be all that they want. So it was that was sort of the starting point. And then this blurring of boundaries, my experience was this thing of, does it really matter? And I think you hinted at that as well. There is that between whether they're pro bono or whether they're commercial. If we're focusing on the client, what is there, and how do you transfer that? And it might be more mental coaching, or in some cases the therapy in Steve's case. So it's client focus, I think, and helping them was the main thing which came out. And that then brought in some reapplying bits as a matter of course.
Okay, so an idea I wanted to explore was how the whole issue of contracting differs with pro bono and paid clients. particularly with the paid clients. You know, for example, is the contracting more explicit in terms of what's expected? Are there more surprises with a pro bono client? And Rob had a particular question around this in terms of how the client might be responding to the coach and how the coach perceives the client. Rob, what was your question?
Yeah, so my question was around payment, and if does expectation change if there is a paid element to the coaching, counselling, or mentoring versus this is, you know, you've got 6 sessions and they're all pro bono. And I was just interested in people's sort of thoughts and views around that, whether they've noticed. I know our intention might be the same, but have people noticed a difference there at all?
As our organization, we said that also the pro bono coaching has to cost a little bit, a much reduced price per hour. And the pro bono part is that I don't get paid, but that the clients have to pay a little bit for our organization so that we can maintain a website and things like that. And I heard from others who did pro bono without paying that the problem is that sometimes there is not a very strong commitment of the clients to really to appear at the sessions, and they renounce and things like that. So I think a little payment helps a little bit, but I think for your refugees, for example, they can't pay. They don't have any money for that.
Thoughts from room 1, Margaret? You're waving your pen.
Yeah, I've just got to say that actually, I don't think I've actually had pro bono people cancel on me or not turn up, but people who've got money, who've paid, do alter their sessions. They'll miss a session because they can afford it. You know, I've actually got one client. I've actually had two clients who paid for a full 6 hours coaching program up front and still haven't used the program. And in fact, one has just lost the money because it's been that long, and the other one paid me 6-8 months ago and then ended up cancelling the sessions. And we've made some agreements on when they'll be, but the pro bono, I can honestly say I don't think anybody's cancelled on me the pro bono ones.
Sounds like joining a gym. You know, you get fitter if you pay the membership.
Good point.
Yeah,
I've had the same kind of experience, that generally it goes through kind of senior leadership who then say, actually, this person is the best person that will benefit from it. And there's an agreement that this is something they're going to commit to as their personal development. And given that the senior staff are engaged here, I've never had a problem with that. The one time it's got interesting is with the CEO of a charity who said he didn't want to have it pro bono. Could he pay instead, please? And then we came to an agreement that he would pay me kind of a private fee, and I would donate the money back to his charity for his charity to use. So it became pro bono in kind of spirit. And that's as close to, I think, what Harriet was suggesting, is actually you can get some engagement through someone paying.
Yeah.
It's one I might explore, actually, to see if we can get a bit more for some people if they pay a token amount. So.
We had a bit of an experience with this with Coaching York. Our experience has been, if somebody engages in a coaching program, then they will be as committed to it pro bono as paying. The issue has been getting them to commit to it in the first place. So a few years ago, we offered a very generous package of free coaching to a cohort of voluntary sector organisations in a particular geographical location. I have to be careful what I say here because I'm being recorded. Didn't get any take up at all. And we did wonder that if we said you can have this but at a price, we'd have had a different engagement, a bit like the question Harriet was asking. It's an interesting one, but yeah, I think my experience is also similar. But once someone's committed to coaching, in a sense, once they get a taste for its value, they keep coming back because they find it valuable.
I think that's a point for any of them, paid clients as well. And there are those who are serial deferrers of their sessions in one of the contracts Coaching York has got at the moment. Some of the clients, some of our coaches on that program have reported challenges of serial deferment. You know, is this person interested or not? And, you know, it comes into, if it's a last minute cancellation, does the coach get paid? We've got that one sorted now. But if that keeps happening, what is their commitment? What's going on in their life? Do they not value it? Steve, am I seeing your pen waving?
Yeah, I'm sorry, it's a slight change of tack, but this is making me think about the dynamics of exchange. So if I offer someone coaching and in return they give me money, we've got a very clear exchange. If I offer someone coaching for nothing, what am I getting from that? And I was thinking about, because the two examples I talked about of pro bono coaching that I've done, one is for a refugee organization based mostly in Cairo. We do some more work elsewhere. And I've always been really clear when I do that work, how much I get from learning from them about their experience and about aspects of the world that I otherwise would never see through their eyes. And the other example I gave was coaching through COVID. And again, that was completely pro bono. But again, I'm just thinking I was very clear when first kind of talking to the client that what this was giving to me in terms of it giving me an opportunity to understand what was happening during the pandemic from the point of view of people working on the front line. And somehow I suppose I was partially aware of the dynamics of exchange and it being really important that they understood that I was getting something from it. I hadn't really kind of quite framed that in terms of because they weren't paying anything. So, but I think there is a dynamic process, isn't there? And people on the whole, many of us don't like feeling beholden. Yeah, and if we're not careful, pro bono work can set that discomfort up, I think. So
that's a really good point, because does pro bono, the volunteering, take us into contexts which we might not otherwise experience? Sort of the refugee coaching, which you and Rob have done, is one. What Geoff mentioned around students and the cultural thing was another. So there are some, I think it is broadening. I mean, our learning is the deal, really. I mean, it is with all our clients on one level, but our learning with those could well be a bit richer, methinks, because we wouldn't otherwise experience it.
Okay, we're coming towards the end of our time, but I have one last question for you all. So one of the joys of pro bono, of course, is essentially somebody says they're happy for you to coach them, and you're happy to do the coaching. If you could coach any type of client who you haven't had the chance to coach until now, and pro bono was the way to do it, what kind of client would you like to coach?
That's really easy for me. Artists, because in the time when I'm not doing other work, I sculpt. So I'm sure I would learn a lot from them.
Not selfish at all, then. That's a really growth opportunity.
Selfish, completely.
I know, but
two jump to mind. One based on what Harriet was saying. I've never coached a headmaster. I think that'd be really exciting. I've got like 2 young kids in school. The other one would be an Age UK unit CEO. They helped a member of my family. I'd love to give that back.
yeah, I'm interested in that. The headmaster, I remember, and this is going back a long while, I did something for, forget what they were called. It was a thing of helping people in schools as an initiative, and I spent about a year the headmaster of a school in York, and that was very illuminating. I think they got something out of it as well. They did then invite me to be a school governor, but there was a values clash because it was a Church of England school, and not having any of this faith-based school stuff. Geoff might do differently, but it was a really interesting one to hear about their challenges And I think it is the challenges of others. Sounds terrible that my stage of life, I'm not like Steve, you know, sort of semi-retired, and if bits come up, that's great. I'm not too worried about that, but if they come, so I need to think that one a bit more, because behind the question is something really interesting for newer learning in different contexts, and can one go out and sort of market it and say that Coaching York is interested in working with people in these areas. We need to get better on our marketing for that. There could be some really interesting learning points for members there.
So I'll just give you mine in closing, which is I'd love to coach a professional sports person, because there's that commonality between what goes on in your brain in terms of how you perceive the challenges of your work as a sports individual, where you get your confidence from, how you deal with setbacks, and how the people who you work with within your own support, your own coaching support, how do they work differently from the way I would work with you? I'd be really, really interested to do that. So if any professional sports people out there looking to just to have a little bit of an experiment, then by all means, I'm getting a note from Alex, so maybe I could follow this up at some point. So I'll hand over to Steve to close just a moment, but just for me, thank you very much for turning up. Thank you for giving me an hour of your time. Hope you found it valuable. It's been great talking to you, and have a good International Coaching Week if you join in anything else.
So thanks for helping explore some of the benefits of coaching, experiencing coaching in a different way, which is what we're about as Coaching York. We also have the other phrase, we help people raise the quality of their thinking around things which are important to them. And again, for a lot of this, it would seem to match that. Thank you very much once again, and spread the message of what Coaching York can do. And we look forward to your continued contribution.
Yes, we'll do.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Geoff. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.